And they're especially fed up with fraud and abuse at the expense of vulnerable people who genuinely need those services. Let me be clear, we're not attacking MaineCare here. We're attacking the abuse of MaineCare. When fraud infects the system, it steals resources from the very people that it's supposed to protect. For too long, government oversight has looked like pay first, verify later, or never. Maine people deserve better. That's why accountability matters. That's why oversight matters. And that's why the work being done by Vice President Vance and this fraud task force matters, because protecting taxpayer dollars should never be controversial. As House Republican leader, I believe Maine people deserve a government that works for them, not the fraudsters, not the politically connected insiders gaming the system. We need audits, we need oversight, and we need real enforcement. And we need to send a message to the people stealing from their taxpayers and exploiting vulnerable people. It will not be tolerated. Vice President Vance understands something about mission, duty, and accountability, because before he was Vice President, he was a United States Marine. Marines are taught that when there's a mission in front of you, you don't make excuses. You don't walk away from the fight. You confront the problem head on. You hold people accountable and you accomplish the mission. The people of Maine are ready for that kind of leadership. But this work can't be done alone. And that's why Maine is important. We have a job to do right here in Maine, because this important work cannot be done if the Democrats control Congress. There will be a roadblock to the reforms the people of Maine and the people of the United States are demanding. That is why it is so important that we re-elect Senator Collins to the United States Senate and elect Paul R. LePage to Congress. Because we're going to need your help to do that. We're going to need every person in this room. Look what we've accomplished right here in Maine. When I started in the House of Representatives, in the State House of Representatives, we had 57 Republicans, and then 67, and then 68, and now 73. It takes 76 to be in the majority. We missed the last election by 60 votes in the whole entire state. The trajectory is headed in the right direction. Republican voter enrollment is up. Democrat voter enrollment is down. But we can't take anything for granted. That is what we risk here in this election. I hope that some of you today are inspired. I remember when I got into politics, and I was inspired by the Tea Party and a man who said things I believed in. The experts said he couldn't get elected, but amazingly he did. Then they said it was a fluke. 4 years later, they were going to take him out. It was a no-brainer. He went head-to-head against a powerful Democrat congressman who had been elected many times. But he won, and he received more votes for any candidate in the history of Maine. And I never imagined that 16 years later, I would be standing at a stage in front of you all, encouraging you to vote for that same man for Congress. That man is going to come out right behind me. He's Paul R. LePage. And then look at Senator Susan Collins. In 2020, it was over. Sarah Gideon had a double-digit lead. Collins was gone. We were told that Maine was a blue state, that she was going to lose. But then Maine people went to the polls, and the results were just the opposite of what they said. Susan Collins won by nearly 10 points. When we show up, we win. But we have to show up this election. Sign up for the Neighborhood Navigator. Get to work with your friends and neighbors and your family. Find people that don't vote in every election. Find people that have never voted. Talk to them, listen to them, bring them into this movement. Because trust me, there are more of us than there are of them. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Look at the issues: voter ID, keeping men out of girls' bathrooms, keeping our communities safe, securing our borders, keeping deadly drugs out of our country, supporting law enforcement, not defunding it. These are not fringe ideas. These are overwhelmingly supported by your neighbors. But none of it matters if we don't show up. The other side is counting on us being discouraged. They're counting on us staying home. They're counting on us believing the polls. They're counting on us not truly believing in the power of prayer. And I will tell you this: God moves with movers. So it is time for us to move. It is time. We have proven them wrong before, and we can prove them wrong again. Every person in this room has a role to play. So let's get inspired. Let's get organized. Let's knock doors. Let's make phone calls. Let's talk to our neighbors. Let's bring people into this movement. And let's make sure when the votes are counted, the people of Maine have made their voices heard. Because when we show up, we win. Thank you. God bless the state of Maine.
Republican leader Trey Stewart.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to start. You've heard now from three, including myself, of the four members of the Legislative Republican Leadership Team. I want to give a shout out very quickly to Representative Katrina Smith. She is working awful hard to reclaim the majority here in Maine. Thank her. And I got to give one more shout out to, I'm a bit biased, but my favorite representative in the room. She's also the most beautiful lady in the room. Representative Reagan Paul. She's fighting hard to lower your energy costs. We need a change committee. We need to make sure that we win the legislature to give people like these two incredible ladies a shot at controlling things in Augusta. So help us do that, please. And Mr. Vice President, welcome back. So I think this is the second trip that you've had to Maine in at least the last few months, and I think that the Trump administration's finally caught on to something that we already know if we're in this room, which is how important Maine is, and more importantly, in my opinion, as somebody from Presque Isle, that there is in fact civilization north of Portland. Either way, we are very glad to have you. Thank you for being here today. And just look around, folks. Compotech started with research right here at the University of Maine. And today, in Brewer, they are building some of the most advanced materials in the world to protect American soldiers. Again, invented where? Maine. Built where? Maine. And protecting Americans all over the world. That is a pretty good Maine story, isn't it? And it's part of a much bigger American story. For a long time, we've had some very smart people tell us that America didn't need to make things anymore. Let somebody else make the steel. Let somebody else control the supply chain. We'll just buy it from them. Well, Mainers knew better, and look, if there's one thing that Maine does and does well, it's work. We build ships, we fish, we farm, we lobster, we work in the woods, we weld, and we fabricate. And by the way, Mr. Vice President, I hope you do in fact have some more Maine lobster while you're here, though I do need to be a little careful because I am from Aroostook County, and so from up in the county, we do take our potatoes personally. To save room, and if it came off of a Maine plate, the odds are that that potato started in Presque Isle, which, as far as we're concerned, is the potato capital of the world. And that's about the only bragging you're going to hear from a Mainer. And right now, right here in Brewer, we build the technology that protects the men and women who protect us. The tools change. But does the Maine work ethic? No. And there's something bigger behind all of this. Work isn't just necessary. Work is biblical. There's nothing like watching somebody get that first paycheck, learning a trade, getting off welfare, buying that first home, and realizing, I can do this. I can provide for my family. I can build a future right here in Maine. Work can be a miracle. Real jobs, real paychecks, real opportunity. For who? Real Mainers. Not opportunities for welfare scammers to get rich stealing money that working Mainers sent to Augusta and to Washington. Because when somebody steals from welfare, who are they stealing from? You. They're stealing from the worker who got up at 5 o'clock this morning. They're stealing from the family trying to make the mortgage. And worst of all, they're stealing from the people that these programs were created to help. That isn't compassion, that's theft. I think we have a little bit of a medical emergency going on, so I'm going to take a quick pause. Thank you, folks, for your help in the back there. Let's be sure to keep that individual in our prayers as well, too. If you can say a quick prayer for her, that would be greatly appreciated. So where I left off, I was about to say that's theft. Because that's theft. It's not compassion. And if you're stealing from the Maine taxpayers, those days are coming to an end. The fraud is going to stop. The corruption is going to stop. And if you think nobody's watching, we are. And we will hold you accountable. And if you want to see the other side of the argument, you really don't have to go far. You can look just across that river. Right over there, just in a single block, you can see it. A homeless shelter, a police station, and a whole lot of people who have been failed. In the shadow of a casino and a concert hall. That's what the other side settles for. Managing misery, year after year, instead of ending it. And it doesn't have to be this way. Government's job was never to manage people. It was to lift them back up. A safety net, never a hammock. Restore work, restore order, restore accountability, and restore hope. President Trump and Vice President Vance understand something Mainers understand instinctively. A strong country builds its own ships, makes its own products, produces its own energy, secures its own border, and defends its own people. And it creates jobs that are good enough that a young Mainer can build a life, buy a house, raise a family, and stay right here in the state that they love. That's what the golden age of America ought to mean. Not just a better stock market in New York, not another government program in Washington, a better life in Brewer, a better job in Presque Isle, and a new business in Bangor. A kid graduating from Maine who realizes that he doesn't have to leave Maine to build an extraordinary life. Because in the end, it was never only about jobs. It's about whether our kids can find good work, raise a family, worship as they choose, and build a life in the place that they call home. Maine is worth fighting for. That's the America that President Trump and Vice President Vance are building again. And there's another guy here who knows a little something about work. He spent 8 years as our governor fighting to get Mainers off of welfare and back to work, and nobody has ever accused Paul LePage of being afraid to say what he thinks. Ladies and gentlemen, our former governor and the man we need representing Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Paul LePage.
Good morning. And I'd like to thank Comptech for hosting this event. It's really, really important that we remember that this country is built on work. I know a little bit about that. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth or money or connections. I grew up on the streets of Lewiston. I worked hard, I struggled, I was given opportunities, and I made the best of it. When I walked into the Blaine House, I'll bring you back to a little bit of the past, which looks an awful like the present. I walked into the Blaine House, unemployment was 8%. Our hospitals were owed hundreds of millions of dollars. We had a $1 billion shortfall. Maine was embracing radical policies like sanctuary cities, boys in girls' bathrooms. And believe me, at my age, and my opponent accuses me of being too old to run, I know the difference between a woman and a man. Government was balancing its budgets through gimmicks. The pension fund for state employees was $4.4 billion in the red. And who's paying for all these sins? You, the Maine worker. I was elected, and I promised Maine people that I would make the tough decisions to bring prosperity back. I'm happy to report my 8 years were successful in Maine. We paid back $750 million that was owed the hospitals, despite the Democrats trying to do it on 50 cents on the dollar. We saved health care. We ended sanctuary state, the status. And the reason why is the word illegal means illegal. We reformed welfare and cracked down on fraud. However, the Attorney General of the time, now governor, refused to prosecute any fraud cases in the state of Maine. We passed the largest tax cut in the state's history. And my opponent says it's tax breaks for the rich. 453,000 tax returns got a tax break. And according to my opponent, those are millionaires. You can't make it up. We cut red tape. We told America that Maine was open for business. And the state workers' pension fund the deficit was reduced by 50%. 50%, $2.2 billion. And all this was done without raising taxes. It was about efficient government. By the time I left, unemployment was a record low. State revenues were breaking records. We were getting more money in the coffers when we reduced taxes. And that's how it works. We cannot get Democrats to understand that. Every person who gets elected should have to take an economics course before they're seated in Augusta. Personal income grew while I was governor. Taxes were lower. Tens of thousands of private sector jobs were created. However, today we're back to where we were in 2010. It's unfortunate, but it is true. We did it by encouraging people to work and having the main worker sit at front of the line instead of the back of the line. And we did it by believing in the middle class. We rewarded hard work. For too long, the people who make things, drive trucks, work in our mills, run small businesses, punch a time clock, they're treated like an afterthought rather than a simple thank you for your hard work. Ladies and gentlemen, people are not an afterthought. They're the real deal. They're what makes this state grow, and if we continue to encourage them to work, they will make this state prosperous again. The working man is the backbone of America. Vice President Vance understands more than anyone what happens when manufacturing leaves your community. He knows it means that you lose jobs and people will have to struggle. He knows what it is to struggle. He's been down a similar path than I lived. He knows we should be making things here in places like Brewer, Maine, not in China. That truly matters in the 2nd District. We need leaders who will go to Washington and fight. You know me, I don't go along to get along. I'm going to Washington to work for the 2nd District. And if I have time, I'll do Shelley Pingridge's job and work for the 1st District. I'm not interested in the good old boys club. I always put Maine first, not politics, not relationships. If it's good for Maine, I will work with anyone and everyone to make it happen, even Bernie Sanders. If it's bad for Maine, I will fight like hell to kill it. Maine needs affordable energy. It needs better paying jobs. We need American ingenuity to start making things here in Maine again. You know, the paper mills may have gone, but the 17 million acres of forest land is still here, and the trees are growing, and they're healthy, and we need to go back to work. And we need our elected officials in Augusta and in Washington to take care of the working man, protect the working man, because he's our future. And above all, We need to remember to work. We need to remember who we work for. It's you. It's not the elected officials. It's not the bureaucracy. It's not Bernie Sanders. My opponent is a big fan of Bernie Sanders and his donors. In fact, he's a big fan of Graham Plattner, the disgraced person who was in Troy Jackson's seat, who Troy Jackson is even worse than Graham Plattner. I just cannot understand. The people in the 2nd District know Troy Jackson better than anyone. I'm going to Washington to fight for you. I fought for you as governor. We improved the prosperity of the state when I was governor, and I intend to do that in Congress. But I can only do it with your help. I can only do it if you go and vote. We need people to vote. I hear so many people say, my vote doesn't count. Well, it does count. Let me tell you a little story. In 2000, I was running for city council in the city of Waterville. It was my 2nd term. Halfway through, the schools were doing something, and I decided I would have a petition to go and fight against the schools, so I dropped out. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my name was on the ballot. So on election day, it was a complete tie, an absolute tie between myself and my opponent. So when they did a recount, I won by 16 votes. I wasn't even running at the time, but people did come out and vote. And that is so important. 16 votes made the difference. And I went on to become mayor for 8 years. So I ask you all, please, your vote does count. Your vote is needed. Maine needs you. If you vote Republican, we can change Augusta. If you don't vote, we can't change Augusta. The only way to bring back prosperity is to vote Republican in November. And if you know any Democrats, tell them they're voting on Wednesday this year. Thank you all. God bless America.
Listen. Oh, you're not going to come to me until he talks. You mean? Is that what you're saying?
Please welcome Small Business Administrator Kelly.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. I'm getting off then.
When we're out on the road, and I'm really excited to be here at Compotech. Now, this is an incredible small business that got its start with a big vision and a little support from the SBA. That's my agency. So please join me in thanking Paul Melrose for hosting us here today. It's a great honor. All right. Thank you, Paul. Now, y'all may know that Paul started this business about 15 years ago with a big idea and a purchase of a single piece of equipment off of eBay. Now, thankfully, he took a big bet on his American dream because today, this is the fastest growing manufacturer in the entire state of Maine. Yeah. That's right. That means nearly 100 hardworking Mainers from this local community are producing life-saving ballistics for our U.S. Army, our brave men and women of the U.S. Army right here. And that story is only possible right here in America. You know, all you need here is a good work ethic, a refusal to give up, and a little grace from God. That is the beauty of America. That's the American dream. You deserve it, and President Trump is fighting for that for you every single day. Now, and I see it firsthand. You know what America First means. It means that our first duty is to you and to our great nation, not to illegal aliens, not to big government bureaucrats or globalist elites. And now, you've seen this. That's right, you've seen this. There's a whining group of malcontented radicals that disagree with America First. You know, they disagree with everything that built this great nation for the last 250 years, and instead of rolling up their sleeves and getting to work to build an incredible future, all they do is peddle fake grievances and crazy lies. And perhaps the craziest lie they're peddling is socialism. Socialism is the opposite of the American dream. They want to punish your success. Look, they also want to take over small businesses like this one. They say ownership is bad. They say that the government should run business. And instead of working, they want you to work and subsidize those who refuse to work. Well, that's a crazy idea. And it's not just government control over our businesses, over our main streets. It's big government socialism like healthcare, taking over our borders and opening them up and allowing the Green New Scam to drive massive regulation and shut in our energy. And the worst of all, perhaps, these communist comrades want to defund our police and defund our military. We're not going to let that happen. Let's give a hand to our police officers and our military. I mean, you know what that would do? It would create the type of devastation, the type of poverty that you see in Cuba and Venezuela. That's what they want for America. That's how much they hate America. And my friend, the only thing socialism brings is mutually assured poverty. We're not going to let that happen because President Trump believes in the American people. He believes in this nation more than ever. Now, let me tell you, it is the hardworking men and women that make this country great, but I don't have to tell you that because that's you. And thanks to all of your hard work in this administration, a Main Street comeback is unfolding across this great country because for the last year, the Trump administration and our congressional Republicans in Congress has been laser focused on one thing, putting American workers, families, and small businesses first. I have seen it firsthand. Since day one, President Trump and Vice President Vance have worked with urgency, with resolve, and unapologetically to make America great again. And you see it. We're bringing back what made this country great, the nation that we knew, where freedom and grit, not the government, created generational opportunity. Instead of punishing you with high taxes, we reward you with the biggest tax cut in American history. Instead of crushing you with Green New Deal mandates, we're cutting thousands of regulations every day. Instead of closing great factories like this one and sending millions of jobs overseas, we're protecting American jobs with fair and reciprocal trade. Friends, thanks to President Trump, common sense is returning to America. Common sense. It's common sense. Now, despite the obstruction of congressional Democrats, we're throwing fraudsters in jail when they steal billions of dollars of your taxpayer money. They gotta go to jail. Against the protests of the radical left, we're shipping criminal illegals back home when they commit violent crimes against Americans. You know, common sense. And while the WNBA can't seem to make up their mind about this one, we're fighting to keep boys out of girls' sports and out of girls' locker rooms. Common sense. It's common sense. Now, the mainstream media and the liberal elites said it couldn't be done, that we should just manage America's decline into dependency. But they were dead wrong. All we needed was a new president. Now, you know, the working family tax cuts put thousands of dollars back into hard-working families' pockets, whether it's no tax on tips, Social Security, 20% pass-through deduction for small businesses like this to reinvest in their businesses, to add workers. We see it happening every day. This is the most pro-worker, pro-America, pro-Main Street legislation ever passed in the history of our nation, and yet every single congressional Democrat voted no. They voted so that you would send more money to Washington. They voted against you keeping your hard-earned money in your pocket. But President Trump, Vice President Vance did not stop. They are fixing it. They didn't break it, but they're fixing it. They're working for you, not for the big government socialists, not for the Green New Deal scam artists, and not for our global elites, but for our workers, our job creators, our families like yours who make our nation great. Now, my friends, we are seeing a historic comeback on Main Street, and there's no question the best is yet to come. But none of this would have been possible without the incredible leadership of President Trump and our great Vice President J.D. Vance. And you know his story, from humble beginnings, a man of deep faith, to a husband to Usha, the father of 4 beautiful children. He was the deciding vote on the working family tax cuts, and he's leading the White House task force to end the fraud that is draining billions from taxpayer coffers. Yeah, there's so much fraud. We gotta end it. We gotta end it. But above all, he unapologetically fights for American values, for you, and he does it all alongside President Trump. And that's why he's here in this great state, to stand alongside of you, to save the American dream for you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our great Vice President, J.D. Vance.
Thank you, Roy. Please take a seat. I want to give a thank you to our incredible small business administrator, Kelly Loeffler, who, in addition to supporting our small businesses better than almost anybody else, is also one of our real MVPs when it comes to fighting fraud in the federal government. She has found tens of billions of dollars of your tax dollars and given it back to you rather than the fraudsters. So give it up for Kelly Loeffler for doing a great job. I have a few other thank yous as well. First, thanks to House Minority Leader Billy Bob Fockingham and Senate Minority Leader Trey Stewart. Where are you guys? Stand up. And I gotta give a few shout outs here to a few people who couldn't be with us today. The first is Bobby Charles, who I know is running for governor. Give a round of applause for Bobby Charles. Now, Bobby has got, as you all know, an amazing record of standing up to the drug cartels and the international criminal gangs. He has been an amazing fighter for the state of Maine. He's going to make a more amazing governor for the state of Maine. And of course, the second shout out I got to give is to my dear friend Susan Collins, the senator from Maine. Thank you. Now, I always, whenever I'm in the great state of Maine, which is one of my favorite states, it's beautiful, it's got hardworking people, amazing industries. I love a state like Maine, which has got this incredible natural beauty, but is also a place of hardworking Americans. So I love to be here. And whenever I'm in Maine, I got to give Susan a little bit of crap. Because as you know, Susan is the most independent member of the United States Senate, and as the President of the United States Senate, she sometimes makes my job just a little bit harder. But she makes it harder because she is coming to work every single day and fighting not for a political party or not for any abstraction. She comes to work every single day and she fights for the great people of Maine, and I've seen it. Susan has been, I'll tell you a little story about Susan. She has been in my house probably a half dozen times, the Vice President's residence at the Naval Observatory, and I've never seen a person who is more attuned to the details of every single thing. She's always asking, what does this do for Maine? How is this good for Maine? How is this bad for Maine? And she tries to get as much good for this state out of Washington and as little bad out of Washington for this state, which, by the way, is a very hard job. But she does it an amazing job, and so please give it up to our very independent friend, Susan Collins. And last but certainly not least, we are here to celebrate and give a big shout out for former Governor Paul LePage, who is going to make a great congressman for the state of Maine. This guy is so much fun to be around, and his love for Maine is infectious. This is not a politician who punches the card. This is a guy who loves this state. And we got to remember, when he was the governor of this state, Maine went from a place that couldn't pay its own Medicare bills, Paul remembers this, to a state with huge budget surpluses. And Paul didn't just do that. Paul used those surpluses to do what? He cut your taxes, he tamped down on welfare fraud, and he eliminated the shortfalls that existed in Maine's pension system, while all at the same time protecting the most vulnerable members of this state. He stood up for you. He stood up for retirees. He stood up for the disabled. He stood up for every law-abiding citizen that required Maine's public services to function, but to function for the people who actually paid into them and actually need them. So take it from me, a guy like Paul LePage, he is not a go-along-to-get-along politician. He is an independent-minded guy, but he is independent for you. There's one thing I know that Paul cares about, and that's fighting hard for his people every single day. We got to send Paul LePage to Congress. Now, I'm here in Brewer to tell you that the Trump administration, we're here to send a signal. We're here to send a signal that we fight for you. We're here to send a signal that we're standing with Paul LePage. And most importantly, we're here to send a signal that we are standing up for the good people of Maine every single day. We're standing up for your workers. We're standing up for your families. We're standing up for the incredible natural of Maine and every single citizen who relies on it, who enjoys it, who has made this place their home for generations. Because here's the thing, I am sick of towns like Brewer falling behind. I want towns like Brewer to get ahead. I want Brewer to thrive. We want great manufacturers like the one that we're standing in right now, Compotech, the fastest growing manufacturer in the state of Maine. I want to reward companies like Compotech that invest in their workers rather than in trying to ship jobs overseas just to make a quick penny. So with the help of our friends in Congress, and future friends like Paul LePage in Congress, the Trump administration enacted the single biggest tax cut in history for Maine's workers. We brought down drug costs, Trump RX, and ensured that our nation's housing supply goes to citizens, not to private equity investors. And we provided historic tax relief for Maine parents and families. We have invested $1,000 in every new baby born in the United States of America thanks to Trump accounts, which we're very proud of. And as you all know, the Second Lady and I just welcomed about 5 weeks ago a beautiful fourth child, baby Alec. Thank you. Somebody behind me is very excited about that. Trust me, I'm excited too. But, you know, the Second Lady, when the President asked me to join the ticket and become his running mate, the Second Lady said, well, you can have one of two things. You can be Vice President or you can have a fourth child. Ladies and gentlemen, I must be pretty persuasive because I got both. But I got it in part. I like to joke because, you know, she was not sold, Usha was not sold on having a second child. And then I said, honey, the Congress just gave us the $1,000 Trump account and the working families tax cuts. She was like, all right, I guess we're going to have a fourth baby to take advantage of this. But when you hear Kelly Loeffler rightfully talk about the rise of socialism, one of the things we believe in the Trump administration is that the way to defeat socialism, it's not to throw slogans at people. It's not politician talk and repeating the same old thing. It's giving people a real stake in the future. Now, $1,000 may not sound like much, but you take $1,000 to a child born tomorrow in the United States of America, and you give that child 18 years of compounding, 18 years of interest accrued, 18 years of investing in something, and that's how we make the next generation of Americans have a real stake in the next generation of the American economy. And that's what you gotta do if you wanna fight socialism. Give people a stake in the future. The Democrats are running a very corrupt game, which is they're trying to tear down this country, tear down our young people, tear down our military, and what's left over with the ashes of what they've torn down is socialism. Well, we've got a different approach, my friends. We want to invest in you, we want to fight for you, and we want to fight for your children's future. We're going to defeat socialism by giving you a stake in the American dream, and that's how we're going to win the future. But I got to say that what we're doing it's not just a 2-year or even a 4-year process. Think about this. This country was plundered over a generation. Our goal is to reverse a consensus that has screwed over communities like this one for decades. I got to be honest, it was Republicans and Democrats that did it together. For 40 years, places like Brewer have been told that it doesn't matter. That it doesn't matter if we make things here in Maine or 5,000 miles away with foreign workers. Think about this. The people who are running our country, the people who are supposed to be devoted and dedicated to this community, they said that we were stupid or stuck in the past if we wanted good manufacturing jobs right here in communities like Brewer. What we really needed, they told us, was just to juice the short-term profits of a few big corporations. We needed to open that border and prioritize foreign workers over our own citizens. They would cheer on the corporate raiders as they slashed headcount and shifted all those businesses either to foreign countries or brought in illegal aliens to employ. And as our politicians and some of those corporate cronies got rich, who bore the cost? We know it was us. You bore the cost. We bore the cost. Communities like mine in Middletown, Ohio, and communities like this one in Brewer, Maine. Men and women who built their lives around a factory or around the community that existed and was supported by that factory, they were left powerless. And they were left destitute when decisions by far-off politicians made this community poor so that a few people could earn a few quick bucks. And it wasn't just the businesses, my friend, it was the politicians. But just as it was a policy choice by people in Washington to let that happen to you and to your community, in 2024, Brewer made a new choice to reverse 40 years of American decline and send Donald J. Trump back to the White House. And if you think about it, in just 18 months, we have seen an industrial renaissance all across the United States of America. Nationwide, all across our country, factory construction employment has exploded. 83,000 new jobs in factory construction just since Donald Trump came back into the White House. Trillions of dollars, trillions, are pouring into our country to support new facilities, new jobs, and of course, new workers and to train workers in the new jobs of the future. And as companies start building, orders for new factory machinery and other capital goods are breaking records. We're seeing the very foundation laid for a manufacturing renaissance all across this country. Did you know demand for metal cutting and machine tools has hit its highest level in almost 40 years in the United States of America? And all that construction, my friends, it's supporting, as Kelly said, an America First manufacturing boom, with last month's activity in the manufacturing sector reaching its highest level in years. We've created, in just 18 months, 29,000 new manufacturing jobs, and we've reversed years of wage decline where people were getting poorer. Now finally we're seeing wages up 4.2% just over the last year. And who are the beneficiaries? The workers at companies like Compotech are reaping the benefits. Now, you don't have taxes on overtime. If you work a little bit harder, the federal government ought to keep its hand out of your pocket, and it is, thanks to the Working Families Tax Cut. And this business is the perfect example of what we want to see thrive. Our vision of America is that we want businesses and workers investing in their communities, investing in their homelands, and thriving together. Where previous generations of Washington leadership would reward the people who were shipping factory jobs overseas, we are rewarding factories and manufacturers right here in Brewer, Maine, like Compotech. Now, one of the reasons I'm so happy to be here is because I think this factory has an amazing story, and it exemplifies a lot of the rise and fall, and under President Trump, the rise again of American industrial might. If you visited this very facility 16 years ago, you'd have seen a much, much different sight. In 2010, the previous tenant closed up shop, cutting 100 good-paying jobs in the community and leaving this massive, beautiful space completely empty. Fast forward today, 16 years later, and what you've got is the perfect example of the revolution in smart manufacturing occurring under the Trump administration. This is a business that's gone from 2 to 85 employees, hiring back a whole lot of the men and women who lost their jobs in 2010 under the administration of Barack Obama. And it's not just that they've got great jobs, they're doing something really important in the process. They are building the critical defense tech that keeps our service members safe overseas. I was in one of these cans, and it was unbelievable how strong it was and how capable it was, and you can put them up almost anywhere in the blink of an eye. So they're not just working good jobs, they're not just making good wages, they're investing in their own community, and they're hiring local, and they're teaching technical skills to Mainers in the process. Now, I want to give a special shout out to one of the very impressive people, Jamie Beers, who I believe is behind me. Jamie? Now, they didn't tell me that Jamie was a good-looking guy with a beard, and Jamie, I hate good-looking guys with beards because they make me feel jealous, but I gotta say, Jamie is an amazing human being. He's a maintenance manager here who worked his way through high school to learn his trade, so he could take care of his 3 daughters. Now, Jamie is a real son of the state of Maine, having been born and raised in northern Maine. This is his home. And I want to give him a quick congratulations as well, because this past June, he got married to the love of his life, the beautiful Danielle. So congratulations, my man. This is right there. Not just the love of your life, but a fellow employee at Compotech. All right, man. This company's been better to Jamie than I realized. Now, my friends, this is exactly what I love to see in states like Maine. This is exactly what we want to support in the Trump administration. We want companies that buy American, that hire American, and that invest in American communities. You know, the Democrats have this idea that business is bad and everybody else is good. Our attitude is much more subtle, but it's much more real and true. That if you're a business that's building in your backyard, if you're investing in your workers and trying to make a great American product, then we are on your side, because you are on the side of American workers and American patriots. We want companies that help our country and our workers lead the world in innovation without selling anybody short. And thanks to the efforts of folks like Kelly at the SBA and, of course, the Working Families Tax Cut, we're lifting them up. We're making it easier and rewarding them for investing right here in Brewer so they can continue to expand, continue to build, and hopefully have a couple more love stories like Jamie's. Now, our administration's policies. Is that really your brother? Okay. Well, God love you guys. This is a family affair. Our administration's policies, look, we've allowed manufacturers like Compotech, we've encouraged manufacturers like Compotech to invest more in tooling and then to get reimbursed for the training and the apprenticeships that they are actually working on and that their people are doing. We took action to allow our small businesses to worry less about ridiculous red tape that had been put in place by congressional Democrats. Here's the basic principle. If you run into issues with federal contracting, they can work directly with Kelly's team at the Small Business Administration so they can go toe-to-toe with their bigger peers. Because think about it. The big businesses, they've got an army of lawyers that can cut through that red tape. Compotech doesn't. So what have we done? We have put the government on the side of companies like Compotech and the workers who are building this community. It's a great thing. And when places like Brewer thrive, when Compotech thrives, they make our whole nation safer. But it also means good wages, it means stability and dignity for the men and women who work here. It means workers can raise their families. It means people can not suffer under financial stress, but can have the space to fall in love and spend a little bit of extra time with their families, maybe take a vacation. That's what this is really about, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about, you hear people talk about growth and the importance of growth. Why do we talk about those things? Because we want good jobs. We want dignity. We want the dignity of knowing that if you work hard and you build something, if you play by the rules, your country is going to have your back for a change. And work naturally, that's the only thing that is actually going to give people that real dignity. A welfare check is never going to replace a job. And we've got a choice in November. Do we want a party that provides good jobs or a party that provides a lot of welfare checks? I vote for good jobs. How about you? But it's not just good jobs that protect your dignity. Another thing that we've got to do and that we've been doing to protect your dignity is stopping that terrible poison that was flooding across the southern border and costing thousands of Maine citizens their lives. By closing the southern border, the media and the Democrats, they say that it's heartless. It's heartless to enforce your border. But our border enforcement is not based and fear or hatred of anybody else. It's based on a love of our countrymen, of a love of the people, the men and women in this room. Because what we did is that we helped keep drugs out of Maine communities. Don't take my word for it. Last year in 2025, did you know that overdoses in the state of Maine were down by 20%? And already in 2026, they're down by another 17%. We sealed the border, and that's what happened, my friends, and that's why we did it. So even as Democrats call for abolishing the police or for slashing the funding of the people who are keeping that border secure, we have backed the blue and fought for our police officers because they fight for us every single day. Let's give a shout out to our great law enforcement officers. They deserve it. To our police officers, our sheriffs, and everybody else, our firefighters, we are never going to abandon the men and women who put their lives on the line to keep communities like this one safe. And because of their work, and because of our efforts to support them in Washington, America is undergoing one of the largest reductions in violent crime in the history of the United States of America. Did you know that homicides in this country plummeted to their lowest levels in 126 years? That's amazing. That's an incredible thing. Now, it's not rocket science. On the one hand, you back the blue, and on the other hand, we've deported thousands of violent predators, criminals, fraudsters, and other people who are making it harder for law-abiding citizens to live their lives. And it's not just the effect on crime. You know, I was always asked during the campaign, they'd say, what are the things that are causing housing prices to go up? And I'd say common sense, it's supply and demand. That if you bring in millions and millions of illegal aliens, you got to put them somewhere. And when you give them houses that ought go by right to American citizens, that's going to increase the cost of housing for everybody else. Well, it's 18 months, ladies and gentlemen, and the verdict is in. Where housing doubled under the leadership of Joe Biden, rents are falling for the first time in a decade under the leadership of Donald Trump because we got people who shouldn't be here the hell out of our country. It's very simple. Now, you hear me talk a lot about job growth, and obviously that matters. We care a lot about job growth, but I don't just care about job growth. I care about where the job growth goes. And did you know, this is the craziest statistic of the entire last administration, that all of the net job creation under Joe Biden's leadership went to foreign-born Americans, mostly illegal aliens. Under this administration, all of the net job growth has gone to native-born American citizens. It's gone to you, because that's who we're here to fight for. Now, we in the Trump administration, of course, joined by our good friend Paul LePage, we operate under a simple principle. The government exists to put you first. But who do the Democrats put first? Well, unfortunately, everybody else, not you. At every turn, the far left has opposed our work to put law-abiding American citizens first. They opposed our effort to cut your taxes. They opposed our effort to secure the border. They opposed our effort to support the police, and they opposed our effort to bring down those fentanyl overdoses. And unfortunately, I gotta say, Maine has been a perfect example of this, because as amazing as this community is, natural beauty, hardworking people, Maine has every single bit to be a recipe for success. But if we compare the last couple of years to when Paul LePage was governor, what do we see? We saw that Paul LePage cracked down on the epidemic of welfare fraud and abuse happening in cities like Lewiston. He doubled the number of investigators he had in the state going after fraud. And meanwhile, the current group of jokers running the state of Maine, they have doubled down on fraud. They have doubled down on stealing your tax dollars and giving it to people who shouldn't deserve it. They've doubled down on making it harder to find and catch and prosecute the fraudsters. They've made it harder for your tax dollars to go where they ought to. And this is where I want to close out, because everything that I've talked about, all of the good work that we're doing, the tax relief, everything is going to be jeopardized unless we stop allowing fraudsters to take advantage of the state of Maine. We got to put the fraudsters behind bars and fight for you for a change. Now, I asked Paul, I said, how in the name of God did a state that was doing so well when you were governor and has the most amazing people anywhere in the world, how did Maine become one of the main capitals of defrauding the American taxpayer? And the answer, turns out, is, well, I've heard a lot of answers. All of those are right. But look, one of the answers is somehow you guys hired an auditor who is not actually an auditor and failed the auditor exam. Well, call it old-fashioned common sense, but if you want somebody managing your money, maybe they ought to actually meet the constitutional requirements to do the job. And for Matt Dunlap, if you've got a guy who cannot protect your tax dollars from fraudsters, who has turned your state into one of the fraud capitals of the United States of America, maybe you should be saying to Matt Dunlap, you're fired, not promoted to the United States Congress. So when I look at the choice before you, it's very simple. Are we going to choose somebody who fights for businesses like Computech, or going to choose for people who encourage companies to ship jobs overseas? If we're going to fight for companies like Computech, we need to fight for Paul LePage. Are we going to fight for the people of Maine who have been victimized by the fentanyl coming into our communities? Or are we going to fight for the drug traffickers who have brought it in? If we're going to fight for Maine, we got to fight for Paul LePage. Are we going to fight for the fraudsters who are stealing your money? Or are we going to fight for your children to have a safe and prosperous community right here in the state that they love? Because if we're going to fight for the children of Maine, we got to fight for Paul LePage. Are we going to crack down on the food stamp fraudsters so that the food stamps can go to the needy Maine children who actually depend on that program? If you're fighting for the people of Maine, for the food stamps, for the people who actually deserve them, and not for the fraudsters, we got to send Paul LePage to Congress. At every step of the way, you guys are blessed to have a congressional candidate who has actually fought for you rather than the fraudsters, rather than the criminals, rather than the illegal aliens. So I'm going to say very simply, my friends, everything that we've accomplished over the past couple of years, it could be undone if you send a lot of crazy people to Congress to fight against us. What I'm asking is that you send an independent voice, a voice for Maine. You send somebody who's going to fight for you and against the fraud. Send Paul LePage to Congress, and let's get to work to save our country. God bless you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, guys. All right. Now, please, have a seat. Sorry, I told the media I'd take a few questions. I forgot about that. So, I would like to start with the local press, and if we've got a little time, I'll take some questions for the national pool after that. Local press, fire away.
Vice President Vance, Grace Blanchard, ABC 7 and Fox 22 News here in Bangor. On the topic of fraud, just a few months ago, you were across the river in Bangor addressing fraud concerns and expressing an openness to work with the Mills administration. Can you speak on any progress that has been made since then in terms of regarding cooperation between the Trump administration, the fraud task force, and the Mills administration?
Well, what I said back in Bangor a few months ago, and I'll repeat it here today, is we don't want the anti-fraud issue to become partisan. We really don't. Democrat, Republican, or independent, whoever you voted for president in 2024, you should be standing behind the principle that the hard-earned tax dollars of the people in this room ought to go to what they paid for, not to the fraudsters. That's simple. So we've reached out to the governor, to the attorney general. We've gotten, some people in their office have been responsive, but I hate to say it that after a few months of working with these guys, I don't have a great amount of confidence that they're going to lean into this anti-fraud effort. And I think the problem is that their incompetence or their something worse is one of the reasons why Maine has become such a capital of fraud, and particularly it's a lot of healthcare fraud. You think about this, the two big federal programs, Medicaid and Medicare. Medicare is the program that you paid into if you're an elderly American for your entire life to ensure that you've got good health care on retirement. Medicaid is the program that ensures that our low-income Mainers and low-income folks across the country have access to basic medicine. And I like that. I don't want a kid who can't afford to go see a doctor to suffer. We say in the United States of America, we're going to take care of our fellow citizens when they're down on their luck. And that's a good and amazing and generous thing. What do you see? You see fraudsters taking advantage of those programs. You see people saying that they're providing health care services, collecting a whole lot of money, but not doing a single bit of health care. It's got to stop. And what I'd say to the governor and the attorney general of this state, we continue to have open arms. Come and work with us. Fight against the fraud. Fight for your own people. We'd love to work with you.
From the Portland Press-Herald. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the negotiations over the tariffs with Canada, and particularly what might you say to businesses and consumers that are worried about the impacts of those tariffs and how those negotiations are going?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd say we're very mindful of the fact that Maine is a border state with Canada. There's a lot of cross-border transaction between Maine and Canada. And what we're trying to do here is just make sure that Maine actually gets a fair deal. If you look at the amount of tariffs that have been applied, not just on Maine, but on a lot of our northern states that are doing cross-border trade with Canada, Canada and China have been the two worst countries when it comes to trade policy anywhere in the world. What a shame that is. China, you of course expect. They're our biggest economic competitor. I would expect that from China. I would not expect that from Canada. We have to remember, is a state, sorry, Freudian slip. That was actually an accident. Canada is a country that has underinvested in its military that quite literally would get invaded by a foreign country were it not for the umbrella of protection provided by the United States of America. And so how does Canada actually respond to that? By treating the people of Maine fairly? No. They apply ridiculous tariffs and other non-tariff duties on Maine products coming into Canada, and they don't expect Maine or anybody else to fight back. We're sick of that. We are actually going to fight back against unfair trade practices, whether it's coming from China or Canada. Now, and let me just give you a very, very simple and concrete example. If you buy dairy, cheese, butter, milk that comes from Canada into Maine, you probably are buying a product that has 0% tariffs on it, okay? And by the way, if Canada applied 0%, that would be one thing. But you know, if a Maine farmer sends dairy products into Canada, they could be paying as much as a 250% tariff. Now, how is it fair to the farmers of Maine that they pay 250% when the Canadian farmers pay nothing? That unfairness is something that we just have to fix. And here's what happened with the most recent round of negotiations. They're still ongoing, and I want to be respectful of the process. But we know that Canada allows itself to be used as a backdoor for Chinese goods. They treat Chinese goods more fairly than they do the goods that come from the people of Maine. It's insanity. And what we've said to Canada is stop it. Apply a basic principle of fairness to the trade that you're doing between North Dakota and Canada, between Maine and Canada. And what happened at the very end is they came in with a bunch of unreasonable last-minute demands. I frankly thought we had a deal. I think that we should have a deal, but I think that we need to send a message loud and clear to the Prime Minister of Canada. Stop taking advantage of the people of Maine. Stop taking advantage of America. It's over. We expect fairness in our trade policy. I'll take a question from this gentleman up front. Uday?
Do we have a mic for him?
Well, I appreciate that question. The question was, how do we ensure accountability for the people who have committed fraud? And I do know that the Maine Wire and Paul LePage and really everybody who is a patriot in this community has been on top of the fraud issue, frankly, well before I was. Paul LePage has been the biggest advocate in state or federal government anywhere in the state of Maine at protecting your tax dollars and protecting these programs. It's one of the reasons why we got to get Paul LePage to Congress. I need the help, ladies and gentlemen. You got to send Paul to help me. But the two big things that we have to do to ensure that there is real accountability. Number one is when somebody commits fraud, they've got to go to prison and we've got to prosecute them, and that's what we've been doing. If you look at the number of anti-fraud prosecutions you've already seen, but also at a new, we set up a special position within the Department of Justice, an anti-fraud guy within a deputy attorney general who's just going after fraud. That's his 100% day-to-day job, and we've massively ramped up the prosecutions. The second thing you got to do, and this was shocking to me when I started this work, is that if you had low-level fraud in the United States of America, we would largely, it wasn't an official policy, but if you committed fraud of, let's say, $1 million, the federal government would just look the other way. Isn't that crazy? So what we've done is we've said no fraud is too small. If you are defrauding the American taxpayer, we're going to do everything that we can to put you in prison and send a message to the other fraudsters. The gig is up. Commit fraud against America and go to jail. Let's do one more.
Jackie Mundray, I work at WMTW, the ABC station in Portland, Maine. You touched on immigration a little bit, and I know immigration enforcement has been a priority of the Trump administration. I'm sure you're also aware there was a fatal shooting at the hands of an immigration agent in Biddeford 6 weeks ago. Last week, there was a shadow hearing with Democrats that say the Trump administration is not investigating this shooting. Where are we on that investigation that happened in Biddeford 6 weeks ago?
Well, first of all, that's not true. There was a shooting, as you mentioned, about 6 weeks ago. And of course, the Trump administration, our Department of Justice, everybody investigates this stuff because we want everybody, whether they're political friends or not, everybody has to follow the law in the United States of America. It's that simple. Now, in that particular case, I don't want to comment on it. I want to prejudge all of the details. But look, when you have a law enforcement action, when you have somebody who is committing a crime in the United States of America, and you go and arrest that person. Now, I believe the person who was shot was not part of the underlying investigation, but when the officers approached the person they were trying to arrest, that person, drove away from the scene, and what at least the law enforcement officers argue is that that person posed a danger to the community. Again, I'm not going to prejudge the case, because I think everybody is entitled to their case, not in the court of public opinion, but a court trial by their juries, an actual real investigation, if that's what ultimately happens. Everybody is entitled to understand what's going on, whether what they're being accused of is actually legitimate, and ultimately, of course, if there is a criminal prosecution, then they're entitled to a jury by their peers. But when I look at that case, what I see is inevitably a country that is trying to enforce its laws, and that hasn't for a long time. And while Democrats get extremely agitated about this case, again, we're investigating that case. They're being dishonest if they say that we're not investigating that case. But what I see from Democrats is people who are far more worried about a shooting involving an illegal alien than they are about the fact that tens of thousands of Mainers died from fentanyl overdoses by that poison brought into our community. And so my message to the Democrats who are so worried about that situation is to say, have a little bit of perspective. We can absolutely investigate every shooting, and we will, but we can also secure our border and ensure that that poison stops coming into our country, and that is our priority, and that's our emphasis. Now, we're gonna hit the road here, so let me just say one final thing, and then I guess it's Monday. Tomorrow is my 6-year-old, his first day at kindergarten, so we're very excited about that. I have some kids here who looks like they're not excited to get back to school, but let me just say that, even though I grew up in a different part of the country, I have a certain feeling of camaraderie with communities like this one, because I grew up in a town, a steel mill town, where everybody said it was the town of the past. People just accepted that the steel mill jobs were going away, that all of my buddies' dads would have to lose their jobs, that my papaw would lose his job, and that that's just the way that it was. And I remember growing up and remember how many people, how many grandparents and parents said to their kids that if you want a future, you're gonna have to go somewhere else. You're gonna have to go off to school somewhere else. You're gonna have to find a career somewhere else. You're gonna have to get job training somewhere else. And I remember thinking to myself, how heartbreaking is it for a mom or a dad or a grandpa or a grandma to invest in this community, to love this community, to raise their kids in this community, but to not believe that there is any opportunity in the future in this community that they love. And that's one of the things, it's one of the reasons why we love Compotech. It's one of the reasons why we're trying to invest and reinvest in communities all across the state of Maine. Because I don't want you to look at your own community as something that needs to be left behind. I want you to recognize that there is a great American future for your children, for your grandchildren, for your entire family right here in Brewer, Maine, right here in the state that you all love. So when you ask yourself, why do we do what we're doing? It's not just because we want jobs. Of course we want that. Of course we want dignified wages. We want good health care benefits for everybody. Why we're doing what we're doing is because we know that the future of America cannot be rebuilt if we write off certain communities or leave certain communities behind. So my message to you, my message from Paula Page is, the future is right here in Maine, so long as we're willing to fight for it. I'll stand by your side. Fight along with me. God bless you guys, and good to see you.